call to order at 6:08, and we'll have the flag salute, and let's please have Sally. Would you lead us in this?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we stand?
Yes.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next we have from the last meeting, Tammy, you sent those out, correct?
Sent what? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Yes, I sent out the
Minutes.
agenda and I sent out the
Minutes.
minutes. Yep.
Okay, so we have to approve those minutes.
And if you can't find it, they are on the shared drive as well.
Okay, so do we have a motion to accept them from the last meeting?
I can't motion because I'm the one who
I'll
made
make
it.
a motion to accept the minutes from the March 15th exploration.
I'll second that.
Anybody have any corrections to make?
Any yays? Are we all in
Aye.
favor or we're not? Any
Let's
no's?
roll.
All in favor.
All in favor.
That's for me.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, we'll take a look at the updates, and while we do that, at the same time, we will add the people on that have joined the committee, and we can make the change of those that are no longer on the committee. So so we have Laura and Tammy, and the members of it, we have already put on Larry Brown, Nate Castle, and Denise Trafton. Now, well, let's do the roll call. Sorry, I forgot the roll call. As we do the roll call too, we can add the people on that are new. Okay, so let's go around. And Denise, do you want to start out, Denise?
Yes, Denise Trafton here on the committee.
Okay, now Denise, you are on group 4, am I correct?
I think I also added myself to another group 1 and 4, maybe? Am I
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
Yes, you're correct. You're on group 1 and 4. Okay, that sounds good. Pam, are you on? Pam Pinnell?
Yeah,
I
I'm
see
on.
your name. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, Pam, can you introduce
Pam on the
yourself?
committee? Is Pam on the committee now?
Yes, she always has been.
Oh, I'm promoting her.
Okay, so which group would you like to be on, Pam? Group 1,
I'm
2,
not on
3?
the committee, I'm just absorbing.
Oh, okay, that's right. You were going to be, but you didn't have time. I'm sorry. Okay, so you just are going to sit in. Am I right, Pam?
Earl, if I may, reading from the agenda, for Group 1, it is Laura Turgeon and Tammy Crandall, and facilitators with Nathan, Denise, and me as the members for Group 1.
Correct.
Yep.
It was
Okay.
just seeing if there was any new people and wasn't sure where they were going.
Well, Alicia
Correct.
Slaherty is new.
Yep.
I am.
Oh, okay, Alicia, which group would you like to be on? Group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
I mean, what do you guys think? Since I'm just now joining on, where do you guys need help at? Like, where would I be most useful?
I would definitely say Group 2, because
Okay.
we'll be discussing that. And member Mike has resigned because he hasn't had time to fully embark himself on this.
Okay,
So
and
it would make
it's Sally
sense.
that's leading that one, right?
And then Mike is also on 4. Sally has done an extraordinary amount of work on that as well as number 2. Actually, all the groups are excellent, but these are 2 groups that they've done a lot of legwork on. So
So I'll
if,
get with the facilitators of that, and then like I'll just send an email, and then you just email me, let me know exactly what parts you want me to focus on, what info you want me to get, whatever it is that you need.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll send you also, we've had a couple of subcommittee meetings or subgroup meetings, and I'll send you those notes.
Okay.
Sally, if I may speak for a minute, if you need any help from me as well, I wasn't able to attend the first 2 meetings. So if you need any help on 4 from myself, I haven't contributed much to that group, but I am willing to do anything.
Okay, is that Denise?
Yes, Denise, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate it.
excellent. Okay, then group 2, Sally and Heather. We'll be discussing that more in depth. So let's take a look at group 2. Sally, why don't you just in brief go over group 2, who you and she have on there?
Okay, well, Mike resigned. Is that what you're
Correct.
talking? Okay, so it's myself and Heather and Alicia. So that's
Okay.
who's on the committee right now.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to be on it? That's going to involve a great deal of work, because as we
Right.
go through the agenda, you're going to find there are 5 different schools that have expressed a degree of interest.
Right.
And so is there anyone else that would like to be on there?
Well, I think group 3 is going to have more of the work, because group 3 is like setting up the arrangement once we know what schools.
Yeah, they're gonna have to break down the numbers for the different areas of everything and the cost.
Okay, so
Well-
Abby is going to need a facilitator to assist her on that. That's Laura, did you want to jump in there with her?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, because
So if I could add about group 2, one of the things that I started doing on group 2 was looking at some of the data for each of the schools. And so looking at program of studies, looking at test data, as well as what services they can provide, as well as extracurricular activities, sports activities, and so on, because we have a lot of schools who have expressed interest, but I think we want to be methodical about making sure that the schools that we ultimately suggest, that we really have a good understanding of what their background is and how the schools have performed. There's an interesting site on the DOE where you can actually go in and you can compare schools. So you can compare like Farmington, Somersworth, Prospect Mountain. You can take a look at across the board to see how they compare with each other.
I went and looked at some of those too, actually, of the ones on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I envisioned a lot of work with, that group doing. So if I'm wrong about that, let me know.
Sally, this is Denise Trafton again. I just had a quick question. In doing the research on the schools that are interested in Milton, have we also gathered the data from the last conversations we had with Farmington a few years ago?
Yes, it's all in under the first.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look in there. I've got to get
Yep, that's in there. The one that you asked me about earlier, I don't believe is,
Yeah.
but
The other one was in the late 80s. Carl Seaman had
Doug's-
donated land.
Doug, excuse me. Earl is gonna look into that one.
Good, okay, because it ended up being the land was retracted and taken back
Yep.
because Wakefield wasn't interested, but times change.
That one, I believe, also involved bringing in Acton
Yep.
Yes,
from,
it did.
from Maine.
Yes.
And
Yep.
special legislation was put forward by our senator to bring that about.
That is correct.
It is unlikely, but everyone lives in hope. It is unlikely that from 25 years ago, that.
Yeah. You're right.
I had the same thought.
Paper trail.
Question
Disappear.
on group 2. Will there be a common template so that each of the schools can be asked the questions regarding capacity? So we have transportation costs. So we have prospective tuition. So we have a list of possible curricular activities and the class size, and going as far as to consideration of impact of staff required from both ends, and what the receiving district would expect in terms of dependent administration to cover the additional costs of the students entering into that school. So that you can read down A, B, C, D, and have the following the answers on that for what the transportation costs would be and how that would impact on transportation within the remaining students for this district. ... There's a whole, I can think of about 10 different criteria that each of those possible districts should be answering for what they can bring to the table to provide a continuum of services for the school district, including such things as pushing a couple of years out what you do for, I'll throw in the word cohort, for people who are juniors now or freshmen now. How will they finish out their degrees, and what will the mix of courses be that permit students from Milton to enter into the new school and complete a course series?
So do you just mean like how the academics line up with each other? Like what would be required different of them than of what Milton would require for those particular years?
Yeah, and
Do we have a Milton list of like what each grade level is required? That way we can have that in front of us.
I can put in the graduation requirements.
Yeah. So that's why I brought up the whole thing about the DOE comparison chart. So when you put something in, like if you're looking at, are they, trying to think if they're like the enrollment, just say, so it will go across the board. What is the enrollment at Somersworth? What is it at Farmington? What is it at Prospect Mountain? Then it has, the requirements for graduation. It has programs or studies. It has the test scores over the last 3 years. What did the kids in Farmington score on their reading test scores, then Somersworth. So it compares it all. So absolutely, we want to make sure that we have consistency. So whatever information we get at one school, we want to make sure that we collect the information at all the other schools so we can do a good comparison.
Neat.
So, Larry, I don't know if you've seen what she's done this far, but obviously that's what the committee is for, to discuss these things, to embed the ideas you have. Also, we're obviously going to have to embed as we go on with the discussion 195 A3 paragraph 5, It speaks to what needs to be looked at in terms of area agreement, some of the areas. This is a highly complex area, but the more investigatory work we do, the more exploratory work we do, the best it's going to be. So
Carl, can you restate what that was?
195A3, paragraph 5. The whole area of 195A3 takes into consideration, but paragraph 5 has some important areas that are significant to address as we do our work. There's a whole host of things as they come up, but we're trying to get input from everybody on this and go in the direction. So going back, there's some rollover, just like when our administrative team did the reopening plan and we had strands that we looked at. There's a crossover effect as we look at these groups. So through this discussion, hopefully we don't have more than one group doing the same work. And there's a great deal of corollary and overlap between group 3 and 2. So I think that, Sally, I know you've done a great deal of work on this so far, and now in group 3. So where do you see the interface, Sally, with group 2 and 3?
Well, I was thinking about group 2 was looking at, curriculum, not so much the financial part, because I thought the financial part was going to be group 5, I guess. Right. And so I'm looking at curriculum requirements, extracurricular activities, sports, comparing graduation rates, looking at
college courses.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is the program of study, what things. I'm also looking at special ed services, counseling services, what kind of support teams do the schools have. So I'm looking more at the academic part rather than, the transportation part or the financial part. That's what I had envisioned group 2 to be doing.
So what would be the transition to 3? What do
So
the people on 3 think? Laura, what do you two think, and what are you folks thinking on that, on group 3?
Well, I think that number one, we need to remove Lynette McDougall because I guess she quit.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we can probably do is, once Sally and Heather and Alicia have done their due diligence, I really see group 3 being the team that sits down and says, okay, now I'm going to take all of this investigative work that everyone has done and really look to see what are the best, options for Milton, if we decide to go that route, which schools have the best academics, which schools have the best sports, which schools are able to accept, Milton students, and, kind of decide whether or not we want to make it, is it one school only, one district only? Do we look more at a Barrington where we give the families, choice? I guess that, because Sally's done so much work already, it kind of leaves the group 3 in just a flux of, what do we look at next? Do we just start to review what makes better sense? I don't know.
That'd be an important question to ask the other schools when we have conversations, the ones that are interested, when we do have that conversation, to specify, if they're gonna only do this deal contingent of us sending all our students, or if they'd be willing to do a contract where you know, you have to have X amount of student to where
Well,
you
and
can
that's,
have that
and that's
choice.
what
We
we need
talked
to
about that
discuss. Yeah, we
last.
need to figure out whether or not we want to be able to give families a choice as to whether or not they go to Prospect Mountain or whether they go to Farmington, you know, and, you know, we
Or
have
if we
to
want
look,
people to come into,
right, or
Well, that was
vice
one thing I
versa,
was
right.
gonna ask. The
And
letter
not
that
just
got
go
sent
out.
out, the letter that
Well-
got sent out didn't
well-
ask any of them if they were interested in sending kids to us, and I thought we were gonna look both ways.
so it's, yeah, it's not just to send people out,
Right.
it's to have
Yes.
people come to Milton as well.
I think that's
Oh.
important because, you know,
I
in the
agree.
past, that has happened. Lebanon, Wakefield, all came to Newton.
Next observation on 3, the 195A says that when you have an area agreement, there is a date where the sending district no longer serves its own students in its own school, and that's the date of operating responsibility. To get the date of operating responsibility, you need the cost of tuition, and you need the fair rental cost for the use of the building. So both of those have to come into a discussion of a formal area agreement between Milton and School X. And if, as I'm reading Group 3, investigation of an arrangement for complete school choice, that is awkward because it suggests that in year 1, year 2, or year 3, you could have 10, 50, and 3 students decide to use a quote area agreement. How does that possible irregularity and dealing with 1 or 2 receiving school districts fit in?
Well, I think we talked to Barrington. I watched the video where you guys had the conversation with them and how they did it with the kids, you know, where they had to fill that out and do all that beforehand. And they also said that in their data, they haven't really shown that it was an issue of kids, you know, flip-flopping where they go to school, that rarely happens. But that's
Barrington doesn't have
that's not
a high school at all, so can we talk, because we're talking like, yeah, we're done, Newt's gonna shut
Yeah,
down.
we're not.
So I don't know if we want to talk process, Earl, because is there going to be a choice for people to stay at Newt if they want to?
Mhm.
And so I think talking about, Larry, is a percentage like Wakefield does. Wakefield allows a percentage to go to one school versus all going to Rochester. But again, they don't have a high school either.
Okay, let's take the things one step at a time. We have a lot of things on the board. Yeah, we will take a look at those schools that do want to send, but also too, like Larry had brought up, we have to hear from the rest of the folks in Group 3. But the main thing, it is contingent upon us to ascertain what the costs are. So for those 5 different schools, we have to figure out prescriptively, just like Larry was saying, what all of the costs are. And going back to the model, Barrington came in early on and just to show that if in the end, when the information is given to the total school board, that they're taking a look at all of the factors. So actually, between groups 3 and 5 is looking at the business part of it, and I think Heather can really take the lead there, and she's done some work on that. So what we want to firmly ascertain is what are the total costs in each of the schools. We have the intangibles that we're that we're taking a look at. But what specifically is the cost per student to attend each of these five schools? So what are your thoughts on that? How do you think we could embark on that?
I mean, I think that it sounds like we have a lot of questions for all of these schools. Like every group has some questions. And I think, I don't know, Earl, if you want us to funnel up all of these questions to you so that way they have a main contact and they're not receiving 5 different people coming at them with, a lot of different questions. But I mean, it sounds like we have to ask them. I mean, from reading the email communication from Prospect Mountain, it sounds like they've already had conversations about this, the cost perspective. So I think we just have to ask them, what they're looking for.
Did we respond to them? Because they had asked, if we responded by their next meeting or whatever, that they would try to get us, to speak to somebody on, I can't remember what date. I don't have it pulled up right now. So have we contacted them back?
I spoke to him on the phone and I said our exploratory group is going to meet and that he was one of the schools. I didn't tell him that there were 5 schools, but he wrote back a thank you note. And in it, I asked him to explain the essence of the discussion that he had with me. So who was that? I can't keep track of it. Who just asked me that?
I did.
Alicia.
Pardon me?
Elisha.
Okay. I'm sorry, Alicia.
That's okay.
I see you now. Okay, good. Okay, so going back to that, I guess Heather has a good point. This is the essence of the conversation. I think that we put together all of the business and all of the cost parts of it, so we could look at a cost effectiveness type thing. And at the same time, when Jan asked the question, are we going to look to add students to us too? We should also look at what specifically is the cost of students here. What is the total cost for middle, for each of the students here? So I
Yes.
think that we have to break that down, and then we have to get into Rob, you could look at the SPED area, correct? So
You
how
bet.
do you see you interfacing with this?
Earl?
Well, I have relationships with a lot of the SPED directors around just from being in groups with them, so that should help. I obviously know what we're offering and what we're able to do, and I can compare that to what everybody else is offering and able to do. I think it's nice what we have as far as our ability to get to know our students, our ability to know them throughout the years, and to really meet their needs in a in an individualized way that's not just based on the legal IEP requirements and all that stuff. But that's neither here nor there. I can absolutely I've got some relationships around the area that I can tap into to make some comparisons there.
I'm wondering if we could maybe make a list of the different areas that each group is going to investigate, because it seems like there's a lot of overlapping or whatever. Like, what is group 1 going to be taking a look at? What is group 2 going to look at, and so on, just so we make sure that we're covering all our bases and making sure we're not doing overlapping work.
Agree, Sally. I was going to ask, could we have each group say, here's what we've done since our last meeting and here's what we think our next steps are? And then we'll be able to find out, okay, well, these next steps are meshing, and yes, we should have one document go out, or that kind of thing.
Well, that Larry Brown, for looking over Group 1 and Group 5 that I am part of, there are 2 things. I went to 195A, and what caught my eye mostly is the question I have is, as a receiving district, X, Y, Z, AA, whoever, what do you project as the 2-part tuition cost? the tuition is an annual rental charge per pupil and an additional fair charge for building occupancy. And that's what Earl was getting to. And that's 195A1, Roman 9 and Roman 10. And the other thing that I was concerned about, in fact, I even wrote it out, is non-curriculum issues under the investigation of combining with another school district. And that is school spirit, community identity, staff morale, and distance is a loose tether to school spirit. Students traveling out of district will have 1 hour longer day that impacts family, childcare, parental schedules. IEPs and pupil conferences will take 1 hour longer. Sports team participation time will be harder. Travel time will be longer. And if you have a student body of 1,000 and 5 students on a basketball team, that's 5 out of 1,000, not 5 out of 500. Sudden illness, and then the last topic is discipline, which is presently a local face-to-face issue. And how does that work when you are a dependent school district or a guest?
Yeah, we've discussed this as well, Larry.
Yeah, and so that's where the discussion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the districts, just
Right, which is what Sally Riley had asked us all to write on her pros and cons. I believe that's what it was called, as to what you're stating. And so that's why I sent that email out reminding everybody to make sure that they filled that out for her.
And actually, when we get to Group 4, Group 4 did some work on possibly having a survey that's going to go out to people in the town, just as well as students, so we can get feedback from a broader range of individuals, because we feel that we need to have as much information as possible, and also to make sure that people feel like they have a voice.
So I think what Jan had said is I think we should go through the groups.
Yeah.
Like Jan said, I mean, like my group is Group 1. We just went through and we've gotten all the information, the back information, and I don't have really a summary of everything, but I can put one together for next time if that's what everybody would like.
But you would agree, Tammy, we're done with what we need to do,
I think
right?
we need to put things together.
Yeah.
And
But
get
I mean,
it
we're
together.
done collecting.
Well, someone did say that they wanted us to get some more information with regard to back in the 80s. Denise did.
Right. I mean, there are some other there is other information out there, just to have the positives and negatives, because, and I agree with Jan, we want to look at stuff about, were there other schools that asked for them to join us? We want to look at people wanting to come here, have we looked, have there been any reports of schools asking if they could join Milton?
We didn't ask.
I just
we did a year or so ago, right? And
I just get to hear, and I'm all confused as to where we're going with everything when we're, you have all these written down, and we're all over the place, and we need some structure here. I'm confused.
Okay, let's stay with what we would do. We were reviewing Group 1. In Group 1, we have talked to Wakefield. We wrote to them and we appeared at a school board meeting, and Wakefield indicated that the way Wakefield works is 90% of the students are committed to Rochester. 10% of the students can go elsewhere. Jerry Gregoire assured me that we were one of the places of the 10%. Having been the school superintendent there 5 years ago, many of the students want to go to Wentworth. In the year I was there, only 5 of the students could have gone to Wentworth. About 20 students asked to go of the group class they had. And believe it or not, they picked them out of a hat and all these parents were wedged into the room, and they were trying to await what names would be picked from there. So we did go to Wakefield, and of the percentage of students that do not have to go to Rochester, all of them want to go to Wentworth, and they do have the chance to come to Wakefield. We can send another reciprocal thing to the area schools that indicate, is there an interest in them attending here? So that'll suffice with group one, and I can work with Tammy and Laura on that. So
Well,
that,
what if we wait until we have all of the questions for these schools and then maybe combine that into that so that we're not reaching out to them a whole bunch of times? Because I know a lot of the times they have to take it back and go to the school board meeting and things of that nature. So I'm wondering if we just combine it all, like get everything we need to know that we can't find ourselves, you know, including asking them if they want to send students to us, and then have it all in one kind of confined email communication.
okay.
Yeah, and
So,
we need the capacity, the graduation, the cost of tuition, the fair rental cost, and, you know,
Which
the number
isn't
of
that,
curriculum.
you're exactly right. Which
And we need
isn't
to
that
have-
something that was already being put together? And I thought that that's what keep forgetting her name. Sally, sorry, was
That's
saying.
okay.
Sorry.
We also need to have the amount we would charge another town to come to our school. If we're going to ask people if they want to attend Milton, then we need to have a tuition base set for them as well. And we should
well as
not
the
be
curriculum.
approaching, we need to approach those schools with the same information we're asking them for, we need to give them. It's going to cost you $16,000, $17,000 per child. Here's the curriculum that we have. Here are the extracurriculars that we have. So,
okay, so are we ready to go to group two?
May I ask one more question on group one? It is my impression that administrative costs for Wakefield, that I personally think that the gorilla in the room is the hope that by outsourcing students, education costs and tax costs for the operation of the school district will go down for Milton.
They won't.
Because my observation is that inflation and all commodity costs, fuel oil, whatever, continue to hit the districts, and Wakefield has not experienced any savings by downsizing itself as a district.
but Larry, we don't know that because we don't know
You
how much
can't
it would
possibly
cost
know
them
that.
to
We
build
haven't even asked
them a
anyone yet.
school.
Okay,
haven't
why
even
don't we
gotten that far into
why don't
this
we
yet.
stay,
We don't even
why
have
don't
the
we-
budget.
why don't we stay on? We'll wait for the findings to tell us. That was Larry's thoughts on it. So, but let's all get the facts, and that's what the exploratory committee is doing. We're trying to get the facts, and whatever it proves out, it proves out. So let's move to group two.
Mhm.
Okay,
So,
Two, I don't even think we need a whole list for it, like their extracurriculars and what college courses they offer and what sports they have. That's information that's totally public. We can get, we don't even have to reach out to school for that. We can get all that information.
right, and I
Online.
have a lot of that information already. I've been looking online to see graduation rates. That's
Yeah.
important. As well as the curriculum offerings, as well as special ed services.
Do they
So,
offer a GED program?
right.
Yeah.
And do they offer, can students take college courses, get college credit as a high school student? And do they also have a technical center that kids can go to. So I've already started a list of that, and I can certainly get that, pull that together so it can be sent out to everybody.
Oh, great. Okay, Abby, we have you engulfed in group number 3 here. So,
Yes, and I need to clarify some of the groups because I think there might be some confusion. I was under the impression that group 3 was going to be looking at an agreement with sending our kids to other districts, like comparing the districts. So in other words, can you take our kids? How much is the tuition? And are there any stipulations? For example, is it going to be exclusive, or it's going to be one of those Spalding deals where it's a 90-10? So, getting all those questions. And then group 5, I thought was for the possibility of combining with another district. Because I know people have been jumping back and forth. I thought we were separating those two.
you are
We are
correct.
doing both, but they are separate. Group 3 group 3 is looking at outsourcing, and 5 is looking at combining. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So
Thank
did you, okay, so with that being said, where do you think we should go with group number 3, Abby?
Well, I see that last time I looked, the only people I saw that had responded were Prospect Mountain and Farmington, but I see that more schools have responded that they're interested.
Yeah, there's 5. Kathy put stars by them.
Yes, so I got that. I thought though, their response from Prospect Mountain was really interesting, the decline in their enrollment, which we're seeing. I think a lot of schools are going to have to start having this conversation that we're having with declining enrollment. It seems to be across the board.
You're 100% right. What you have in the synopsis is you have hotels and airlines that have open rooms and open seats. And when people have open rooms and open seats, they're more apt to sell them at less of a cost. And right now, it's a market whereby it has significantly changed from 3-5 years ago. Schools are desperate to fill the seats and the chairs because there's simply room in those classrooms for people to fill them. And you know yourself, when do you get a hotel room for less? When do you get an air flight? So there's open seats and they're willing to go at less of a cost. And I'm not saying good or bad, but that is the reality. So we're looking at a different world in terms, I think you're 100% right, Abby. The whole Northeast has been and continues to be, especially rural Northeast, having a declining enrollment. In the studies I did even back 5 years ago in New York for rural schools, is the phenomena that was happening is that students were leaving at the same rate, but students were not coming in at the same rate. So you did not have an equivalent flow of students in and students out where you had it before. And you're right, that is what we're experiencing now. So in lieu of that, it's incumbent on us to get what the specific costs that people are willing to, quote, sell those chairs, sell those seats, or sell those rooms for. So in a synopsis then, Abby, what do you see the role of this group, of the group that you're in charge of?
That's exactly what we need to get is, I mean, there's other important things too, but number one, tuition. What is the per pupil cost that you were going to charge if you take our kids? And also, is there a limit to how many kids you can take? Are you going to have strings attached, that sort of thing? But we can't really do anything until we know how much the tuition is going to be.
Correct.
So can I just ask, so the other things that Larry talked about, like extracurricular activities, class sizes, expected additional staff they might need, special ed services, is group 2 doing all that then?
I believe so.
Okay, is that Is that
Like-
correct, Sally?
Yes, that
Okay.
works. Yeah, thank
I
you.
think maybe the expected additional staff needed could still be, if you're talking costs, Abby, maybe that one could still go with you.
That's true.
But
Yeah.
graduation requirements, services, bell schedule, extracurricular activities
Yeah.
could all be too.
But
Yeah,
that one would be
curriculum and
important for us, right? Because that would be in the tuition costs and something that their school would have
Yeah, I
to.
kind of thought that would kind of cover it, but
Yeah.
Right,
And
that's,
there should be some included special ed and tuition costs. And then there's different like tiers to it. So there's things that would be included in like, say, the average child tuition might be X amount of dollars. And there are a couple of the special eds that are included in that tuition cost. And then there are other tiers for services where tuition for that child might cost X amount of dollars. So what are the prices of the special ed on each different tier? Because they do have the different costs for each different tier of the services needed.
Yeah, Alicia, you've done your homework.
Yeah.
Because Rob has a big smile there. What these tuition agreements or area agreements, and I don't want to go into the 5 different types of agreements you can have, because we'll have another discussion for the next time, and I'm going to quote something, and Larry's going to look it up, and then he's going to tell me specifically what it says, and we're going to enter into a long discussion. So with that being said, what the basic thing is, so that everybody understands it, is what Alicia's saying, is that there is one fee for a student that doesn't need sped help and another for one that does. And then you enter into a discussion of what is that? You know, is it a flat fee? And then do you pay a la carte for OT, PT, speech, that type of thing? So some of that, as we give the information, there are some things that we give to the school board, and then, you know, and I'll get to explain that too, so everybody fully understands. So the exploratory committee is going to give them, the whole board, as much information as we can, but then it's negotiation. So the board may enter into negotiations with the lawyer of Gordon Graham of our school, and then the lawyer of their school, and say, okay, this is what we're going to agree to as far as the SPED students are. But we could get a baseline idea. For example, Rochester, we could get they know what they're charging Wakefield. The fellow from Prospect Mountain obviously had a pretty good idea of where he was going with it. I can't speak for the other three, but that basically in concept is what we're going to deal with, right? Do you want to add something, Rob? And what I just
No, I thought that was a lovely sum up.
Okay, thanks.
I
Thanks.
just ask
You
a
had
quick
brought up
question?
the part where we don't know if we're paying for related services or things like that. And that's really important to me, obviously. But yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Okay, back to Abby in group 3. So,
Can I just ask a question?
yeah,
I see that what you said was about the group 3, Abby, about the arrangement for complete school choice. But wouldn't you want to get, if you're going to have a school there and you're going to ask them all these questions about how much this, how much that, wouldn't you want to have the total for the combining them as well, instead of getting them back here and saying, okay, now we want a price for combining this? Do you see what I'm saying?
no, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Because you're investigating an arrangement for complete school choice, but then we're going to investigate combining the schools. Combining, what do you mean combining in a different school? Don't we want to get all the information at one time instead of at different intervals?
Okay, Well, I don't, to be quite honest, I don't see any of these schools that we're asking, Prospect Mountain, Dover, Farm, they're not.
We didn't ask that question though.
No, I don't see the point in asking, they're not going to, Dover's not going to send their kids
Oh, right.
to Milton.
I
Is
see.
that what
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
In fact, on this list, the only school system that I can really think of that would even be, and I don't think they would be interested really, is Wakefield. So I was gonna talk about that when we got to group 5, because that would have been the concept of combining, but yeah, I don't.
Just those 5, but
right.
what if we get all the others too?
What I think Abby's trying to say, and I'm
No,
trying
I
to
get what you're
say
saying. I get what you're saying.
also in a politically correct way. The only one on there, and I'm okay with asking people, whatever, but Wakefield is the only one on there that would have realistically said to kids. And I think
that's what I'm saying.
I gave, and I think I gave a thorough answer of us going there and why it is the way that it is. And having sat in that chair 5 years ago, I not only know it from the outside, but I know it from the inside as well.
I was just curious. I mean,
yeah. So I mean, in all, we have to explore everything, but for the sake of doing our task and getting the information, the show has to go on in terms of looking at the absolute costs that it would be with each of these schools. Okay, Abby?
I think that's our first step because we're not going to even get into the conversations of the details of the contract until we just have those basic numbers and information that we need.
Yeah.
And if they've already said they're interested, we literally right now just need to come up with a list with the questions we need answered, the capacity, the graduation requirements, the cost of tuition, and if they have an estimate for the different tiered for their special ed, on that, their class sizes. And we don't even need the curriculum because like I said, me and Sally, we can get that, public information, like no problem.
Yeah, we already have it. Yeah.
And then just on our side, we'll just need our transportation cost,
And then we'll have to, you're going to need Nate to help the groups. I would set a specific time to meet with him and go in and go over those courses. Jan could obviously help you with the high school course. Rob Qua would help you with the SPED course. And I could speak to Tim. Actually, he called me on something else since we've been on the phone. I saw he called in. So I can let him know that this group is going to be contacting him because transportation is going to be a huge part of this. Because if you are ever going to send students to another school, obviously the transportation is a big is a big piece of this. So let's look at the support system, Abby, that you have for group 3. Let's go over that. So it's yourself and Laura, am I correct? Abby, you're Laura.
I don't have the list in front of me. I know Travis is gone, but I don't.
Yeah.
Or did we know that for sure that he's gone, or is he just not here?
Yeah. He told me that he was resigning. That for now. Yeah. That he was.
So it looks like for group 3, there's Travis, Abby, Laura, Lindsay, and Lynette.
Lynette's gone too.
No,
Lynette's gone.
And the other thing that I think might be beneficial, Abby, is, so I've, been talking with Nate quite a bit on like the financials piece. I think there's a lot of overlap between 3 and 5.
Yes.
So I don't know what you think about just maybe like collaborating, we can get together, just kind of make it one almost, because we're kind of just doing the same stuff.
We really are.
And
I think, Heather, I can't thank you enough. That's a great a great idea, because we're kind of trying to catch up and keep up and move ahead at the same time. And people are good, have come on the committee and gone on it, and we're kind of feeling our way through. So
And from a group 5 perspective, I know Nate was able to gather a lot of like the financial information. He did a bunch of work. So sorry, I just muted myself. He also uploaded a bunch of information on like the upgrades and things that need to be done to the school, which again, he did a whole bunch of work on it. I recently reached out to him today to just try to understand like the costs that need to be, the upgrades that need to be done to the middle school versus the high school, because I really think that those also need to be in the tuition costs for our students, because of course, if we send them elsewhere, right, that's going to be part of the tuition. So I know that's information that's going to be being looked into, but I think it's good for us to gather the tuition costs from other schools, but we really need to know ours. So just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, Abby, I think let's collaborate and get that all done.
So Heather,
So-
what you're saying is the cost for any repairs or upkeep to the middle school and the high school has to be figured into the cost of
Of
what it's going to
tuition.
cost, right?
Yeah, so he sent over a spreadsheet or a sheet, and it was on the higher end, it was about $3 million, but
Mhm.
it was combined between the middle school and the high school. So what I was trying to understand is, right, like how much is it going to cost for the high school, and then, you know, divide that by however many students there are, and we can kind of dissolve that into the tuition per student, because obviously if, you know, I know we're looking into everything, but if we were to send high school students out, we wouldn't have that repair cost essentially. So
A lot of our repairs get done with grant work and things too. So I don't know whether we can call it a straight tuition cost.
so maybe we could take a look back then and see like an average of how much grant we've received, you know, every year, right? And kind of factor that in. That might be an opportunity there.
Yeah,
Do we
because the
receive
biggie is
grants every year?
the newest ESSER funds and the next ESSER funds are going to provide a lot of money for facilities. So
Do we receive a grant like every year?
we receive some grants every year, but right now with the CARES Act, and then there's been that was ESSER 1, and then we've had ESSER 2, and they're having ESSER 3, and ESSER 2 and 3 are focused more on facilities. So they're providing money for roofs and windows and doors and HVAC and that sort of thing. But yes, even, I mean, the HVAC system that was done at MES was done with additional money from the state. There was no money from the taxpayers for that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's something else we look into though, like all of it, right? The grants, like how much on average we're receiving per year, you know, how many of these repairs need to be done over the next few years, right? And that's not in the budget, minus grants, and then kind of, again, dissolve that into the tuition per student. So.
I think Bob, also the buildings and grounds, will bring him into this too.
Mhm.
You know what?
Pam Pinnell has a question, so I think it would be appropriate to let her ask.
And so I just have a couple questions. So back years ago, when they looked into Somersworth and they got all the data, there was discussions that Newt was considered a historical building, was going to be named a historical building, and the money would come, there would be money coming from the state to upgrade that building. Two, is any group looking at, Farmington is on the list, Somersworth is on the list. Is any group looking into Middleton School Board, why they left Farmington? I mean, why were they unhappy? What was
So,
the, you know,
I've actually heard some discussion about this for when they left. It was because their contracted tuition price and Farmington was overcharging them. And then by the time they caught that mistake or whatever, Middleton had very, very much overpaid Farmington School District.
yeah,
There's a
that's
big
what I had
ordeal,
heard too.
lawyers involved. I think Farmington just recently paid that all back. But Farmington School has also done that with where their school board was not returning the end of the year funds back into the town fund. And so they also ended up having to pay that back as well.
Okay, and I had talked with Joel Shagnon a while back, and has anybody looked into, instead of combining schools or tuitioning out, has anybody looked into trying to get other school districts to join in the SAU, to share the SAU cost? Where we used to have Wakefield and Milton, I mean, like, I know Joel had talked about approaching the board to split the SAU costs between Farmington and Milton. I don't know if he ever did and the board wasn't interested, or has there ever been any look into that?
Lord, Larry Brown, once upon a time when Al Mosco was superintendent in the year 2 after Skip Damon, I put forth an idea to him called the Tri-Valley School, which would have combined Middleton, Farmington, and Milton, just going, the three valleys. Nothing came of it, but it was an idea of trying to bring those absolutely contiguous groups together, taking advantage of Governor's Road, taking advantage of 153, taking advantage of Route 75. And geography is a terrible taskmaster.
Everybody's points are important. Pam, your points are well taken. As we look into Farmington School District, one of the things that could be looked into as we delve into that is what had happened in terms of the arrangement there. I think Alicia knew a little bit about it, but one of the considerations, and I'm sure when it goes to the school board that they have to take a look at, is the ease with which, if and when they would enter into an agreement with the other school, how they would feel about how they could work with them on behalf of our students. And the other question you asked is, we would be dealing primarily, Pam, with the costs involved in an SAU, and it would be a different sort of conversation, a shared services of the SAU. This is more geared to looking at students and where the students would go to school, right? Is that what the group feels?
Well, I'm just saying about cost saving, if they were looking at cost saving. I think
that certainly is something to be looked at as well. I think that's a very good point and makes sense. Unfortunately, Wakefield in their withdrawal plans and so forth, I came when the divorce was pretty much done. It looked like I would have thought that they, Wakefield should have thought a little. I mean, I don't want to get into the political realm of it, but I think it would have made a little bit more sense. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not even going to go there at this point. But I think, Pam, I thank you for that, and it's something that for sure that we could take a look at.
Yeah, I know it's scary, because once you go that way and you make that decision, there's no going back.
Yeah, well, going back to that, and then we'll discuss it as we go. But one of the other things that the 3-5, as we combine groups 3 and 5, one of the things also we'll need to look at is, in the event from the business standpoint, if students were to be sent in some shape or form to other schools, whether it be one school or 3 schools or an entire school choice or whatever we choose at the end, there has been some discussion, and I know some of the group has sent some emails around, who does the building go to? You know, and there's some thoughts that it goes to the trustees of the library because of the way that it was written up. I think Jan had discussed this a bit, and I asked a little bit, but to be sure that we dot our I's and T's, could I ask the group 3-5 to look at that? Because actually, from a fundamental standpoint, we're actually, you know, there is a lot of feeling involved, emotion. We're closing a school. We're really.
I believe somebody posted an article on that in one of the files that's in our shared Google Drive, about the lawyer and how that was done up when he donated that.
It can only be used as a school building or educational purposes. That's it.
Yeah, or I think it said something about it would just revert back to the library.
Yeah, the library trustees would take care of it. They already do oversee pieces of it because
I know when they did that study, the engineers did a thorough study on the new building, and they said it was structurally very sound.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and it needs work. So I just wondered if they ever followed through with the historical.
Right. I think, you know, they got at that time when they looked at everything and they found that it was going to be more expensive to send kids out than it just ended. Even though they said they were.
No follow through. And thank you guys for letting me ask these questions. Thank you, Laura.
Could group number 1 maybe follow up on that? Because I think 3 and 5 are going to have enough to do.
I could follow up on that.
Before we leave that topic, the easiest thing to do is one of the things that I'm thinking through as looking at this and hearing things is the question of executive authority. What would be very useful for the present circumstance of Old Newt is to have the lawyer for the school district write a letter to the trustees of the library, Newt Library, and ask them for their present legal position on the use and reversionary nature of the use of Old Newt as a school.
Well, it's public knowledge to be able to get the information from the trustees. I can ask.
That was not what I said.
Right.
What I said was to have a letter of record from the lawyer for the school district to the trust that administers the library and owns Old Newt, asking them what their legal understanding is and what they will do at this point. That way you don't have to discuss it and you don't have to say that it's public knowledge. You have a document confirmed by the lawyer representing the school district and the lawyer representing the trust. As regards the historical nature of the building, that would be for an LCHIP grant. It might be complicated by the dual nature of the uses of Old Newt. For federal certification as a historical building, you have to go through a complete architectural review and history of the building at a cost of about $15,000 for the document establishing its provenance, to use the fancy word for it. But if you want to get the condition and uses of the building nailed down, you get the lawyers sign off for what they're willing to accept.
In the meantime, before we get that, I did read through that trust agreement, and I believe on page 5, it's section 21 to 32, it specifically talks about the uses of the building. So, you know, in the meantime, if people want to go to that document and take a look at it, it basically says that the land and buildings shall be used as a library and for educational purposes, including but not limited to preschool to adult education, and for such uses as shall be deemed as educational for the residents of the town of Milton. So you might want to go just check that out. I think it's already stated in that document.
Thank you, Sally.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready to go to group 4?
Okay. All right. Group 4 are the intangible factors that we were talking about, and we actually were trying to gather some information from people about, what they thought as what would be those intangible factors that might come into play if kids either stay in Milton or go out. And so with the committee, we met actually on April 1st, and we talked about brainstorming ideas, how to increase the number of responses to this document. And so we came up with a survey that we would like to send out. It could be sent out through the school district as well as community groups. So it doesn't look like it's just another survey from the school. We wanted to, I think, Tammy, you send surveys out to other groups that not necessarily just go to school, to the parents and so on. Is that true?
True.
Okay. Yep. And so we came up with a draft, and what we wanted to make sure was that we're hearing from different people in the community. So we asked, the first question is, what is your role in the Milton community? So are you a current or a former student? Because we thought it would be important to get information from the students. Are you a parent of a current or former student? Are you a resident of Milton or Milton Mills? Or are you a staff member in the school? And so we basically just had 2 questions, and we didn't know if maybe the other groups might want to add on some questions to the survey. But our first question was, what benefits or intangible factors will students have if they stay in the Milton School District? And then the second one was, what benefits or intangible factors will students have if they go outside of the Milton School District? And we put it with, and it's in the Google Drive. So if you haven't seen it, it is in there. And we put a little preamble in there so people understand what we mean by intangible factors. So we're asking for the committee's support to send this out as a survey so we can get more responses. Rob, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I feel like our survey questions are going to make a little more sense if there are more tangible questions that lead up to it. So
Yeah.
I thought it'd be good if some other groups kind of got in on that. Like,
Yeah.
hey, how do you feel about, the class or, the course options if your student was to go somewhere else? If we listed a bunch of tangible things and asked about those and then asked about intangibles, I think we'd get better responses, because I think if we just send a survey asking about intangibles, we're going to get a bunch of information about, 1, 2, 3, 5, which is good too. But it would be, I think it would be a more effective survey if we all, as a big group, put some questions together to see what we were really looking for from the community about this.
I'd be careful about like putting on there if you're staff too, because I mean, just in watching the page and some of the way the community, the comments that get read, they're going to say, why are you including the staff? They're not Milton taxpayers. The Milton taxpayers asked for A, B, and C. And so you might end up getting a negative approach and response to that survey, possibly. I mean, that's just.
And maybe the staff could be surveyed separately.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would probably get you a more positive and honest result from the community if you did it that way.
Jan,
We can definitely do that. Yep.
Okay, so let's take the staff off.
Yep.
Are we all set with the other groups that we have listed? Do you think that's
Well, here's my thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, Sally. I was thinking too that because there is such a difference between your average student and these SPED students, that perhaps maybe there might be 2 different surveys to make sure that the parents understand. You know, I want to make sure that I know that we're meeting the needs of these SPED students. What I want to make sure is that the parents have a voice with regards to, you know, their children outside of what, you know, because you may ask the average kid and he says, I don't want to lose my, you know, star role as a pitcher on the baseball team. But a SPED parent's going to have a lot more involved reaction of, I like the fact that my child's teacher has a one-on-one relationship with my child. I'm concerned about the fact that this one-on-one relationship may not be there anymore. Or I like the fact that, you know, we have such a close-knit community. I want to make sure, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but my sister-in-law is a SPED teacher. I think her opinion and her parents for her students tend to be a lot more involved and want a lot more attention to that stuff outside of just, you know, your sports and other activities.
Well, I think it could go the other way too, because I think there's a lot of concern around these children who need the extra attention, which absolutely they deserve that, right?
Right.
But then I also see the story that we don't really get into is these children who are overachievers and their parents are concerned that they need these challenges, right? Like they need to be challenged and have these, you know, harder courses. So I mean, I personally think one survey just to get all the meat and potatoes of the data would be fine, because I think there's so many different aspects that you could go to that we'd end up sending out like 25 surveys at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think we're going further down the rabbit hole than what we necessarily need to right now. Like we really just need to get that basic line of questioning and that document together. And first just get the info that we have to even be able to lay this all out.
Yeah, and I think when we were envisioning the survey, it was very open-ended, and I think we can leave it that way so that parents of students with disabilities can express that if they choose to. But I think we absolutely need to not do anything that would separate, you know, create a question or what, do you have a student with disability? I don't want to ask that. I don't want to go into that at all.
I
And
agree.
plus we're going to have the information for them. If once this all gets presented anyway, we'll have the information for what schools provide what with as far as the special education goes too. So they're going to have those questions answered in the end when it all gets laid out anyway.
And I think that brings me to another thought here, Earl, that I want to be really mindful that we get like concrete information on is I'm not 100% sure, so other people may be confused as well, of the timeline here as well as the end result. I know you were planning on talking about that tonight, right? So we keep going back to like presenting this information to the townspeople and gathering all this data, but at the end of the day, I'm still trying to understand, you know, how are we going to get it to them? I think that's a huge thing, as well as how are we making this, how are we allowing the townspeople to make this decision rather than the board that has made the past 2 decisions.
I think that would have to be a written article, wouldn't it?
What was that?
I mean, wouldn't that have to be a written article in order for, you know, the town to even vote on something like that?
Okay.
I think that's part of the confusion is that I think part of the committee thinks that, you know, the committee was going to send all this information, sure, do a presentation to the school board, but also that it was going to go back to the town for a vote as to whether the kids would be sent out or not. And I think this needs to be clarification around that so we all understand what is the timeline and what is the process here. I really believe that there's a lot of people in town who do not know this committee exists. They do not know what our purpose is, and they just don't have an idea of this. And I think it's going to come as a surprise. So one of the things that this group was thinking about doing was to get the survey out so people could say, oh, hey, this is going on. Another thing that we thought, because we need to make sure that the town has information that as we go along, that we could come up with some kind of flyer, just like, you know, how they send it out for the voting, where you have all the articles on there. And so we want to make sure that they have the information. So we were talking about sending out some kind of flyer that we could mail out to all towns members, just to know what is actually going on and what we're presenting. So we're trying to get information out there. So I guess that's what we need to make sure we know what the process is, what the timeline is, and make sure that the public has the information.
Yeah, and on the survey, like above it, it's I'm sure it's probably gonna say, you know, in regard to the committee that's, you know, and what we're doing and why we're even asking of this survey.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
because I started out with Article 13 was passed by the Milton voters, and then actually state what was passed by them.
Yeah.
And so just saying that this is one way that we're trying to get information out to people so they understand what's going on. And then at our subgroup meeting, we were actually talking about, would other groups like to add some questions to this?
So I think that's a great idea. I also think, because I'm the school district clerk and I post things at the post offices so that people can see it, but I also saw that there was a something that just went out, a survey of some sort that was left at the post office, and people could take it, and then there was a box and they could put it back in the box after they were done. I don't know if that's an option for you.
Tammy,
Yes, sir.
I can speak directly to that. That was the Task Force on Efficiency in Local Government survey, which was, from my point of view, full disclosure, inelegantly and possibly unusefully joined to an economic development survey already in process. So it had two audiences. What do you think the town should be doing economically? What do you like best about the town? And then the charge to the committee, which was, what are efficiencies in local government? And someone earlier in the conversation, I can't pick the voice, said you have to be careful in involving staff. Some of the responses that came into that survey were, fire so-and-so by name. And that is disastrous to have out in the document. But I would offer the contrarian view that the survey is, the work of the subcommittee is to investigate the intangible factors. And the discussion that just ended regarding IEP students versus regular students versus what used to be called a gifted and talented program is all under the heading of what is the impact of students in programs outside the district. And you already have a solid list of intangible or non-curriculum factors. What additional non-curriculum or intangible factors can be out there beyond a global list of things that have an impact on students going from one district to another? A survey.
I think Larry, I think it was too full. I think we were trying to get information out to the district, out to the town.
Mm-hmm. Neat. Okay.
I also think, Larry and Sally, I'm sorry, I think you froze, but I want to kind of jump in here. I also think, Larry, that with the intangible factors, that's the thing, you know, you can't really know what's really important to, you know, a family or a family group or a neighborhood about going to Newt, about being a Newt student until you ask. So I think that was kind of the point.
Saying
You're
that
right. There's a finite amount of stuff that you can kind of quantify around this, but I think that's why Group 4 exists, and that's kind of why I was into it, is, you know, what are those things nobody's thought of? What are those things you can't put on a box score, if you will, that
Yeah, because
mean something about being here?
Yeah, and what's important to one family might not be as important to, you know, like,
Right, but none of it's any less important, you know? Even if one family has, you know, some kind of thing going on, we should hear that. We should know what that's about.
And that,
so maybe instead of like even lead ups, just what would your intangibles be? Leave them space for comment, and what tangibles and intangibles?
Yeah, 100% agree. As open-ended as possible.
I think
and then-
also staff, I think also have an insight, and Bob, you can agree or disagree, but because you're a staff, that there is insight that you have to the students, and you can also add to the intangibles and the benefits.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Denise, it's good to hang out with you, even if it's over.
Yeah, that's why I like the, you know, I'd like the staff involved. You know, they know the kiddos.
I'll grudgingly agree that maybe it's a better idea to survey them separately, but the staff have at least as much contact with these students as the parents do in a lot of cases. You know, they know what's going on in this school. And so I think the staff input is critical.
I don't want to leave out the human factor of the staff. So you know, they are now aware that this is happening. And I had a new teacher come to me crying, do I need to find a new job? Are we closing? Do I need to look elsewhere? And I thought I found my forever school. But I cried.
Oh, I'm so sad. The other thing though is thinking that my idea of this committee is our job is to collect the data.
Yes. This is
Not
supposed
to
be
present the data
unbiased.
to the town. Our job is to collect the data, give the data to the school, and then where it goes from there so that people can all make an informed decision.
So brings me back to the question, who are we giving this data to? Who is
Okay.
making the decision?
To the school
Who
board.
has executive
Okay.
authority?
Okay, okay, are you ready for me to go into that?
I am ready.
Yes.
We had a good debate here going in a whole lot.
Does Group 5 feel like their stuff is presented enough?
Yes,
Yeah, we already put them with Group 3 in their site.
right,
They're
they're good.
fired up. Okay, moving along here, it's moving longer, but it's been great because we've gotten a lot done. Okay, 6, we've talked about that in depth. Number 7, exploratory committee to update the board in May and the timeline. The timeline we've done. Number 8, timeline for exploratory committee tasks. We've gone over that. We did the synopsis and what they're going to do.
Earl,
Now-
no, for timeline, because for me, I do need a timeline. Are we putting all our stuff to the board in December so that it's going to get on the ballot for people to vote on in March?
Oh,
Or
I haven't-
is it a
I
different
haven't-
timeline?
I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay,
I was looking at the committee tasks of what they're doing now, as you asked for a synopsis of what they're going to do for the next thing. What I'm answering is the higher level question that everybody's asked about. What does the group do? And who does the group report to? Okay, the group is an exploratory committee. And just like we said, I think it was Denise or somebody said it, our role is to bring to the school board all the information that we've discussed. Then from that, the board digests, processes, works through the situation. And it's up to the board to negotiate whatever agreements with the sending schools, the host schools that they choose to. And then they would have their public hearings and do the work that a school board does with the help of the school lawyer that would guide them and help them with anything they would do when they would do they would do their hard work. So it's incumbent on the exploratory committee to bring complete and thorough, transparent information so that the board and the entire community sees. Fortunately, we have Abigail Doug Shute, who had a conflict tonight, was with a town committee that he works on, that he works with. So therefore, we have two people, which is great, from the school board that are a part of the work of the group as a whole. So answering the overarching question, our group does not bring a further article to vote on, or whatever you want to call it, to the townspeople. Then in doing the work, as we get to that, once we give the information to the school board, so as we go, we can ascertain where we are, how much more time we're going to need. So the question arises, though, when does the group feel, and kind of talk one at a time, in May, do we want to go the second board in May? The board meets on May 12th and May 26th. And all we would be doing at this point, like you're saying, like the people were saying, is to give an overview. Yes, this is exploratory committee is working hard. These are the things that we're looking at as of this point, and we hope to bring you the completed information at a date that the committee thinks. Not that it's etched in stone, but giving everyone a brief chance to speak. When do the people feel that kind of go one at a time? It's a little hard on Zoom. Let's start with the people in group one, I guess. When do you think, Laura, when do you folks think?
Well, I think it's going to very much depend on the information that we get back from the other schools. I mean, it's hard to say we can be completely ready by May if we don't have information back from other individuals.
Just have to give them an update. Just give them a little update in May as to what's going on. That's what he's saying. That's all we need.
All we're doing in May, I'm sorry if I confuse you. I'm very sorry. What I'm saying in May, all we're doing is indicating, kind of like what Sally said and Heather said. Yes, we exist, even though Abby and Doug are on it. This is what we are. This is where we are right now. But
okay, yeah, no.
Let me finish. I guess it's premature to say, like Joe said, whatever. It'll all be done in July or August and September. Like they say in basketball, the game will come to us. We can't predetermine where we're going to be on such a date. We have a lot of work to do, and the better we do, and the more concise we are, and the more complete we are, the more this group's work is really going to have a dramatic effect. And with staying away from the political stuff of it went before, and it was given, it was done underneath the rug. But as far as I'm concerned, on this group's watch, in all their sincerity, we're finally going to decide it one way or the other, or give complete info. Because as we're looking back, there was never really complete info. that the board received on all this. So I mean, that's my own thought on that. So,
Earl, I
okay,
guess I guess I have a concern because I was certainly under the impression that, the first couple meetings, it was continuously stated, people in the town want this done over and over and over again. But looking back in, 2014, 5 people on the board made the decision for the whole town. 4 people on the board made the decision for the whole town in 2019. And now it seems like we're almost repeating this again in 2021. And I'm a little concerned that this isn't really going to be up to the town. Now it's going to be up to like a few board members again. And I guess I was completely under the impression that this would truly be up to the townspeople this time. That's why this research was going underway.
Me
That might be
too,
a
Heather.
question for the lawyer too. Like the legality of how you would even, how that would even work out, basically. Because it seems, I guess what we're asking is the legality of it is it ultimately up to the school board to decide whether this will happen, or is it
Yeah.
up to the townspeople to decide whether this will happen?
Earl just said it was up to the school board.
it's up to.
I was
the-
under the impression that it was gonna be a warrant article and the school board can make a recommendation like they always do, but I thought the townspeople voted on it. That was the impression I got.
Right,
So
that's what I got,
was-
that we collect
Yeah,
the
I don't think
data,
there's
we
some
give it to
confusion.
the
I thought this
school
was
board.
gonna be on the ballot.
Right,
Yeah.
that's my impression.
That you are correct, Abby. The exploratory committee gives it to the school board, and then the school board works with the various schools and the school, just like you said, Abby.
Right, and we
Lawyer-
make a recommendation, but
The town,
but which is always like when there's a budget, the budget committee makes votes on it, makes a recommendation, but the towns people vote for it.
Right.
I
So
don't
it
think
would
in speaking of the 2014 data that was collected, it kind of stopped. It didn't proceed any further than, because it all wasn't finished.
Yeah,
Correct.
it looks like they got like all the information for tuition and everything on Summersworth and Farmington, but then there's not really much anything after that. It's like they got the info for those 2 towns, but then nothing, like even in the
It's because the
meeting
board
was looking-
decided not to
Yeah.
investigate any further.
Well,
okay, see, I
Well,
couldn't
well,
find
you
that
know, I
one.
think
Had no
you
idea.
got you have one school board member here. You have the school superintendent. We're indicating that the reason we're here, everybody's spending their time because it's going to be an honest, transparent. I can't look through what has occurred before.
Right.
We're going to look ahead. We're going to look through the windshield, and we're not going to look back.
No,
That's
rearview mirror.
what I'm saying.
So when you say it's on the ballot for like the town to vote on, like the townspeople are gonna make that determination. I'm confused on that piece.
Yes, both of them. The townspeople of the receiving school has to vote for it also.
But it'll be on Milton's ballot in hopefully 2021 for the townspeople to decide.
That's up to the lawyers to see when all the work can be done and the negotiations can be done. But once it's brought into the March, when they meet March, and what happens too, so you have a clear idea, both the sending school and the receiving school, it has a huge impact on the budgets of the 2 schools. So this can involve time to be done right. We're talking about millions of dollars,
Mhm.
and somebody brought up the staffing as well. So people on both sides of this have to plan ahead. So there's millions of dollars. And if you enter into a 10-year agreement, you're talking about committing the taxpayer, the district, millions and so this has to be a prudent thing. It can't, it isn't a race here. You know, I'm being quite, on behalf of the town and the school and all concerned. It has to be prudent. It has to be done right, because there's millions of dollars and you have to plan a budget a year ahead on both ends. So
Yeah.
I'm sure even a receiving school is going to make sure the I's and the T's, they dot them, so they're assured of what they're going to receive.
Oh, no, and I definitely think the work needs to be done, 100% accurate. I guess my concern at the end of the day is that it's not going to come down to the decision, of the people of the town. But it sounds like it's going to go to the board. They're going to make their recommendation, but either way, the town is still going to have the opportunity to vote on the next ballot.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily next.
Let me review a couple of things. One, there was the dual vote of Wakefield and Milton. Back in 2014, Milton decided against disaffiliation. And part of the report phrase of mine was, we decided to stay in for good hope and goodwill. Subsequently, that was no longer the case. Somersworth, Lou Snyder was instrumental in pointing out the restrictions that Milton faced as a dependent school district. For the moment, going through the minutes of the last meeting, which has the committee outcomes, Group 1 is basically finished. Group 2, the investigation of schools willing to enter into an area agreement, depends on having a list of those schools and the capacities and interest of the school district and its costs. The Group 3, the investigation of an arrangement for complete school choice, is unclear. It will depend on what schools are available and what they can offer. The intangible factors, a survey may go out which will extend the end date of any work that this committee puts together. The investigation of combining is part and parcel of finding out what is available from other school districts. My question is still, who is the executive authority? Who is going to put together the final report which goes to the school district, and who in the school district receiving the final report from this committee at whatever date it is, then enters into an executive discussion with the school board and superintendent of District X, District Y, or District Z. Those are the issues. And I don't see a vote coming in time to put a new budget in place for fiscal 21, 22, ... Superintendent can speak to that better than I.
Well, I think we just did. Larry, you reiterated everything we discussed three times. Yes.
Yep.
It is not feasible, and I explained that it's a process that will take time. And yes, the exploratory committee presents all this information to the school board, and then it just works the way Abigail and I had said. Okay, so now the question is, when are we, we're giving a preliminary update, just letting the board be aware of what the exploratory committee is working on. Is it the pleasure of the committee to go in the first board meeting in May or the second board one in May? What is the thoughts?
I say we go first.
Who said
Jan,
that?
what do you think? Laura did.
It depends on if we're just giving them an update on what work we're doing, or if they're wanting, like, the results of the survey we won't have by then. But if we're just letting them know that we're doing a survey, we can certainly go on the first one.
Well, I think Tammy said we were just giving them an update. So I think if we're just giving them an update, we go to the first one and get it done and over with.
I was thinking
This
the
is-
second, they have more to do in the second than they do the first, but that's just my opinion.
I would agree. There's a lot. We're talking about commencement, and we will have not met since April 14th. So there could be a lot on there. It would make more sense and more time. And then I could go over with the various facilitators of the committees of the groups, what we would be discussing. So,
Well, we're not privy to what is already on the boards, on the school boards.
Oh, you're right. That's why I was just saying the
Yeah.
second one would probably be better.
No,
That's all.
that's a good point, Tammy, because all
Yeah.
the financials will be on and all that. So it could be
Yep.
8:30 before we get to talk as a committee.
yes, I think it would be fresh and we could put it right at the top. Does that make sense? And does it make sense that everybody could be on the Zoom, but we'll have the spokesman of the facilitators of each of the committees? Is that okay? Does that make sense?
I say you just have one person given the update each time for,
What is the date of that?
Be May 26th.
May 26th.
I just want
Could
to
I-
make sure.
Could I ask a clarifying question? Because I want to make sure that I have this straight in my mind. So we're saying that the process, we give the information that we collect, and I understood that, to the school board. The school board is going to review all that, and they're going to make a recommendation to the town for the warrant article about whether they think this is a good idea or not. But in the end, whenever that happens, the town is going to be the one that's going to vote whether to do this or not.
They would
Right.
vote on whatever the
Right.
warrant article is.
Right, whatever the
Right,
warrant, yes.
and also, Sally, it's contingent upon the receiving school,
Correct. I
their
understand
their taxpayers, because sometimes it isn't as easy as it may sound that, for whatever political reasons.
Right,
people
and I
say-
understand that perfectly, but I'm just clarifying that the residents of Milton will get a chance to see this as a warrant article whenever, and I understand the other part of it. I just wanted
Yeah.
to get that clear.
Yeah, and political things have a strange way of saying, with,
I
It could-
absolutely understand.
they're going to take our spot on a sports team or whatever,
Correct.
whatever the case is.
I understand.
So, okay. So are we're looking at May 26th. Everyone at least has an understanding of the way that the process works. Is there anything finally for the good of the order other than we're not going to review any more of what we just did. We're just going to see if there's something new that somebody would like to bring up.
I just got one thing, boss. Red
Yeah.
Sox are in first place and the Yankees are in dead last, buddy.
You would have
any-
to bring that up. You would have to
I did.
bring that
I did
up.
have to bring it up.
And anybody who has the stomach for it can go look up the Dunbarton case. And what costs of indebtedness you incur by joining an area agreement. Thank you for the pleasure of your brains. It was nice to hear the work. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Larry.
I just have a
Thank
question.
you, everybody.
I just have a question of who's writing up, whatever letter we're sending with all of our questions, information that we're gonna be asking of these schools that we're sending it to. So my understanding is each group is gonna get their questions together of what needs to be asked on this letter, who's going to be writing that letter up.
So I wrote down everything that Sally and Larry said tonight. So if you want, I can kind of draft a list and put it on, or I could just email it to everybody, put it on the share drive too. And then if the committees could add to it if we missed something, and then it would be one complete list of questions.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Excellent.
That's a
Excellent.
great idea.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, go Red Sox.
My question on writing up a letter to send to the school districts so that we can get this information.
Well, I'll do the template. I think Earl would have to write the letter to go with it.
Okay.
Yes.
Executive authority.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Thank you, Alicia. That was a
And it
good
would-
question.
It would go to those 5 schools.
Okay.
Obviously, we're not going to send it to schools that aren't interested in any type of marriage with us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Are we all set?
are we all set? Are we all psyched? Are we all ready to go? Thank you. Everybody did extraordinary work on this. It's not an easy thing to do. We have a lot of landmines and a lot of political stuff, but I think we're staying above it. And I want to thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome, welcome.
Bye-bye.
Good night.